Good afternoon. We can hear you. You can hear us? Oh. Pat, can you hear us?
Yes, very well.
Perfect. Gotta take the mute off. Okay, then I think, Mr. Killian, we're all set.
Good afternoon. The time is now 4:32, and with a quorum of members present, we will commence today's Parks and Recreation Committee. And the first item number 2, will be public comment or suggestions. Is there anyone in the chambers or online who'd like to provide public comment? There appears not to be, so we will move on to item number 3, approval of minutes from December 6, 2021. Any comments, suggestions, or edits?
I move to approve, Mr. Chair.
Alder Neal moves to approve.
I'll second.
Alder Larson seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Item number 4, discussion and possible action supporting the Great Pinery Heritage Waterway Project by the Wausau Marathon County Parks and Recreation Foundation. Ms. Polly, would you like to start us off with some background?
Sure. I'm actually going to turn this over fairly quickly to Mr. Bertram, who's here, who's the president of our Wausau Marathon County Parks Foundation. This is a project that you've actually seen, I believe, before, or went to our park commission, I know, and I think we might have given an update on something they were working on about a year ago. The committee, or the foundation has done, there's been a subcommittee that's done quite a bit of work on it with Mr. Bertram to change it a little bit. So he's here today to talk about where they are and kind of moving along, and then I can talk about where we're at with the city launches. So we took this to the park commission last week, Parks Committee today, because of the launches that are within this plan that our department manages. We have both county and city launches that will be part of this project. So I am going to share my screen. So there's a PowerPoint in your packet, and then we will turn it over to you, Mr. Bertram. So, all right, I'm going to scroll down and then zoom in. Okay.
Again, I'm Bill Bertram, the president of the Park
Oh,
Foundation.
is your microphone on?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
There we go. Yep. Much better.
Okay, great.
You're going to be on record.
Yes.
So again, I'm Bill Bertram, the president of the Wausau Marathon County Park Foundation. And about a year and a half ago, we had vetted up a couple different projects for the Park Foundation that would be impactful to the community at large. And of the two we looked at, this was the one that we vetted and we elected to support. And in our December meeting, we approved that project based on your approval as well as the county's approval of this project. And it's really a case of branding the Wisconsin River from Hat Rapids in Lincoln County to the DeBay Dam, using the name, the Great Pinery Heritage Waterway. Originally it had a different name, and the Historical Society could not support that name. It was the Voyager Heritage Waterway that we may have talked to the Park Commission a year ago. They came up with the name the Pinery because of the historicalness of the Pinery. And it's really a storytelling at the landings and between Lincoln and Marathon County, but specifically in Marathon County, of the people and events that happen along the river. And most importantly is to put GIS locators and the amount of time between landings for paddlers to come to central Wisconsin to use this waterway. So if you, in addition to the project, we plan to create a one-of-a-kind, best-in-class website that is located within the CVB's new website, not just to talk about this project, but to talk about all the outdoor recreation attractions that we have in Marathon County. And the reason for that is the data would lead us to believe that if you come here to go paddling, you'll typically want to stay 2 or 3 more days to go biking and to go hiking. And we actually have some of the best hiking in the Midwest with the Ice Age Trail and Rib Mountain, as well as the biking portion at 9 Mile, Sylvan Hill, and Ringgold. So next slide, Jamie. So if we look at what tourism is to the state economy, the BLS data would tell us that tourism now is the fastest growing segment of Wisconsin's economy, and from November of 20 to 21, that tourism was the second largest part of Wausau's economy. I can also tell you with the data I looked at that it would also tell us that we are a drive-through county in the summer months and I'll say late May to October, that where people go on a per head basis and spend their money is north of us in Vilas, Oneida, and Forest County. They have a much bigger impact to tourist dollars than are spent here. So if we can go to the next slide. So, you know, the question is always, what is a water trail? It is no different than a land trail, but on water. And it also opens up our water resources to our community as an economic benefit, as well as a way to anchor people to come to the Wausau area and central Wisconsin to see other activities. So it's having navigable spots, downloadable maps on a website, and then at each landing, in addition to the storytelling, there will be a map located there that would show the next section of the water trail. And in our case, we're actually looking at 3 water trails as part of this project. An overarching water trail that is the Great Pinery Heritage Waterway, and then finishing the lower Eau Claire River Trail from Yellowbanks into the Lake Wausau, and then a third trail from Marathon City to Lake Wausau, and that would be called the lower Big River Trail. Next slide. So again, you know, why did we tackle this project? Well, it was alignment with the Greater Wausau Chamber of Commerce's master plan for outdoor rec that was put in place in 2018. It complements the Wausau Whitewater Park. We think driving more people to Wausau to take part in kayaking. It, as I mentioned, complements Weston's lower Eau Claire River Trail. It also complements potentially what the master plan at Rib Mountain could do for Wausau in terms of off-season or counterbalancing what goes on at Granite Peak in the wintertime. So that, and part of the Rib Mountain plan showed that we're going to have, probably within the next 20 years, 2 months less of winter. And that means less people coming here to spend money in terms of hotels and restaurants in the wintertime. And this would counterbalance that. And there's also, every study I've looked at shows that there's great economic benefit to communities that have water trails for all of our residents. It makes us a better place to live, better place to recreate, and the real benefit of this is our own citizens in Wausau and the surrounding communities. We're really blessed with 28,000 acres of water in Marathon County. A lot of people don't realize that, but it's one of the larger counties with great water resources. And then we're also one of the few counties in the state that has a confluence of 3 rivers that dead end in the downtown area. And it allows paddlers a lot of variety of water to come here. Narrow rivers, a little bit of ripple, and you know, rapids on certain sections of the river. The trail has already been completed. It was done in 2008 by the Wisconsin Valley Improvement Company on what they call their Century Project, and they created a trail from the headwaters up in Vilas County all the way to the Mississippi. The majority of landings are already in place because of the great park system that we have. We may have a few enhancements of landings. This is completely neutral from a cost perspective for the county and for the city in terms of grants and in terms of the funding would be through foundations and federal monies that we would apply for. Any of the residual monies, we're hoping that would, if there are any, it would roll over into a maintenance fund for the Parks Department to use on park maintenance, and hopefully specifically here on the water side. We're also budgeting in some donation boxes and things of that nature to have people, it's shown by experience, and I'll pick on Tomahawk. They've put donation boxes at their landings. They've had a huge amount of influx of both positive comments to measure their usage up there, as well as collecting monies from people out of the area on having a great experience. Next slide. So this is the original strategic plan that's up from that was done by TIP Strategies. I started developing a relationship with John Roberts, the principal of TIP, and one of the comments he would consistently make to me was, we've actually turned our back on our probably greatest resource, and he didn't see it as Rib Mountain, but he saw it as our water and the amount of water we have within a 60-minute drive of Wausau. So that he felt that other communities across the Midwest, probably across the country, would die for what we had in terms of water resources in our backyard. Next slide. Oh, I'll go to the next slide, Jamie. So this is an executive summary from a special report on paddling done by Outdoor Recreation Institute. And again, it would tell you that most paddlers spend 4 hours or less, about 81% of them. And the tidbit that I thought was really interesting was that people will come to the area to paddle. 85% of vacations a day are driven by females, and they'll typically look for other activities in an area once they bring their families here. And we're strategically, logistically have a great location to the whitewater rafting to the east of us, and a little bit better water to the north of us as dead center on this trail. We also think it complements our 150 years in the city of Wausau with the name Pinery, as well as our history of over 100 years with the parks. Next slide. And the next slide, Jamie. And the next slide. Here we go. Thanks.
Yep.
If you look at this map, there are 23 designated water trails in the state of Wisconsin today, but there aren't any close water trails to Wausau and to central Wisconsin. The last trail to get designation by the state, and just recently national designation, is the Chippewa River Trail in Eau Claire, and then the Fox, Wisconsin River Parkway over in the Fox River Valley. So those are the last two developed. Both of them are now national trails. And we also think over time we would apply for national status of this trail and the Department of Interior site to drive people to central Wisconsin. If you want to see what a trail has done to a community, all you have to do is go over to Eau Claire. And it is simply amazing on a hot Saturday or Sunday, the number of floaters and kayakers and canoers they'll have downtown Eau Claire using that trail. And now a lot of the construction is in their center city to support both millennials and Gen Zers that want to live in the downtown area. Next slide. So this is the trail. It's, as I mentioned, a three-river trail. Approximately 103 miles in length from Hat Rapids in Oneida County. We thought that was a good starting point. What we're talking about today is what we're funding in Marathon County exclusively, and then the creation of a second narrower water trail from Marathon City to Lake Wausau, and then completion of the lower Eau Claire River Trail that was put in play in 2018 by the Village of Weston. Next slide. As I mentioned, this comes off the county's website on the name The Pinery, and the use of the term Pinery. We're applying for a $39,000 marketing research grant from the state of Wisconsin on getting some research and data behind this, and then we'll apply for a marketing grant next year in terms of hopefully getting more and more people aware of us as a paddling and water destination. So this is a logo, and you can, to the left on the Great Pinery Trail, what it might look like. You can go to the next, yeah, there we go. So the trail designer is the Wisconsin Valley Improvement Company. The storytelling is by Marathon County Historical Society for the landings in Marathon County. The mapping is done by North Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. The project sponsor is the Park Foundation. The park, or the project owner at the end of this, will be Wausau Marathon County Parks Department in Marathon County. And the website sponsor is Central Wisconsin Visitors Bureau. And again, we're only looking at Marathon County. The next slide, Jamie. There are 26 landings that we would be doing the storyboards at. There's a total of 39 landings totally that we're looking at. And then in Marathon County, around 77 miles of paddling trail. Next slide. And I'm going to show this slide. This would be typically where the landings are at. We do have made some suggestions to the, I'll say the county or the city. We have one of the few dams in the state that's located in downtown Wausau that doesn't have a flowage name behind it. You look at the Rothschild Dam, the flowage behind it is Lake Wausau. If you go down to the Mosinee Dam, it is Mosinee flowage and Half Moon Lake. If you go up to Merrill, it's the WPS Dam, but Alexander Lake. We would actually, from a marketing perspective, to say, let's have some fun with this, and maybe it becomes Lac Grand Bull Chutes, which is the original name for Wausau. Was the French name, not Big Bull Falls was an English translation of it. Could have some fun with that. Next slide. Talking to the different communities in the area, there's a lot of excitement of infrastructure around this already. Rothschild's looking at putting a new landing on Lake Wausau. I think they budgeted that for around $900,000. I'm sorry, Schofield. Rothschild is also looking at a landing at Military to open up the lower Wisconsin River. Marathon City is looking at putting a new landing in. Rib Mountain is putting a new landing in, or looking at a new landing for Rookery Park. So a lot of excitement on the landings to increase those and make better access to the lakes and the rivers. Next slide. And then the next slide, Jamie. So this is a pictorial of how these trails would connect on Lake Wausau. Makes it attractive for paddlers that come here with a variety of water. Also talks about some of the proposed enhancements. The city of Wausau, I think Marathon County, we own a big piece of property right at the mouth of the Rib River as it dumps into Lake Wausau. Be a great opportunity to name that piece of that parkland, maybe after a civil servant. The reason is, anytime we can put a designation on something, we can market around it to get more people to come here and use the trail. It might be a great place for a conservancy. I've talked to the airport and Pat and John over there with taking the airport property to the, I think it's the Ben and Judd Alexander waterfront or lakefront. Again, it would be an enhancement to mark around that, and also protects that piece of property. Next slide. This shows the conservancy up on the Eau Claire River that we have with Lake in the city of Wausau. I've talked to Schofield. They're also looking at how could they attach to that to make it a larger conservancy. It's just an incredible piece of water if you're a kayaker or a canoer. I think it's the best in the area. It gives you a real up north feeling. And then the next slide, Jamie, and this is what the signage potentially would look at the landings. It's the same signage that is at Weston that they use at Ross Avenue, and on their trail today, we would mirror that exactly. We use the same vendors that they're using. One side of the sign would tell a story, The other side would have a map and amenities for the kayakers and canoers to use. Next slide, and this is a kind of a blow-up of what their signage looks like on the map side of it. Like I said, we're using exactly the same folks. Next slide, Jamie. Next slide. Yeah, and then this is we're on part of this, as I mentioned, is a enhanced best-in-class website that would be part of it. And then if you could just scroll through to the keep going, right there. These are the communities that we've talked to up and down the river. We've had 100% support from Tomahawk all the way down to Knowlton on this project, along with private landowners and dam owners. So any questions that I might be able to answer for you this afternoon? Thanks for taking the time.
Questions from the committee, comments?
I have a comment, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Alder Neal.
Well, first of all, I mean, thanks a lot, and this is really cool. I've lived here since like 1999, and one of the first things my wife and I, said was, boy, the river is just ignored and underused, and it shouldn't be that way. So, and things have been changing, and that's good. And I like all this. I just one thing right here towards the end that struck me, and I'm going to beat on this drum like I do for a lot of other entities and efforts and whatnot. You talk about the best-in-class website, and it's great. You have to have that. But, for fans, aficionados, people that you want to engage with and whatnot, websites aren't as engaging typically, a bit more static, more of a library where you go to learn stuff, but not a place where you go to, chit-chat and meet people and share experiences, photos, all that kind of thing. So that's why social media should be an integral part of what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
So, and really work on that in terms of outreach to build up, all these people that are, those signs should all say, join us on Facebook or whatever, or Instagram, just line them up and so that they can say, yeah, I'm part of that community, and they're going to engage and spread it, organically, and that's really important.
Yeah, this is a great point. We plan to have 2 spots we're thinking DC Everest might be one of the better spots because of usage, and about 80% of the kayaking now is in that lower Big Rib River, and to have we're working with a marketing firm to create spots where you could have your picture taken for Instagram and for social media. Absolutely, that's the name of the game today, where you can post that and say, hey, I had this great time, and there'll be this shot of Rib Mountain behind you as you look through this permanent attachment there. So yeah, that's part of our plan. Yeah.
And nice thing is, I mean, it doesn't take a lot of effort, to get something like that going and to keep it going.
Right.
If there's somebody within the group who, plays in that arena to begin with, all they'd have to do is 2 or 3 times a week, spend 10, 15 minutes and
Right.
just, freshen it up, have something to say, post a new photo, an event, whatever,
Absolutely.
So, there you go.
Absolutely. Yep.
Alder Watson?
And I guess to piggyback on that idea, have you thought too about having something downloadable into Strava or some of those apps for the GPS tracking?
Yeah, it's another great question. So the name of the game today, if you're a bike rider or if you're a kayaker, is Strava or Go Paddling, or River Apps is another big one. So we've identified every app as well as the state sites. But for most of us, if I ride bike or if I kayak, I use my phone and I have that app. And the big difference today, if you would go on our river, you would not see those GIS locators where those landings are at. And going forward, we would have this posted at every paddling site in the U.S. as well as at the state sites. And yeah, that's exactly what we're going to do. And then downloadable maps today versus hard maps. We also plan to potentially create what we call a passport. And I lived in Europe for 3 years and hiked this trail there called the El Camino. and you get a passport, and it's a commercial trail where you get stamps on it for businesses as you stop in there and you have a beer or you have, so we look at creating a trail map on a passport, and I've been into a couple of the retail businesses now and brought that up to them, and they love the idea, how it would drive people back to their business. And I was at the Eagles Club, and they said, oh my God, this would be incredible for us. And because of that, we would be thinking of how could we provide additional infrastructure for this trail on Lake Wausau for more people to come here and potentially kayak or canoe rentals or paddle rentals at that spot. Yeah, so there's some real opportunities to get people here and keep them here once they're here, so, yeah.
I had a question for Bill.
Yes, Alder Peckham.
Yeah. Bill, I wonder if you could explain for us what would be involved in, say that you would finish the trail on the Eau Claire River. Would that be from the boundary village limits with Weston down the rest of the river to the Cofield Dam, or would be involved there, and would just be adding some more signage, or what's needed?
Yeah, a great question again. So they branded the lower Eau Claire River Trail through Ross Avenue. And actually the best section of kayaking that is from Ross Avenue to the Eau Claire flowage. And so there is one spot they have on that trail at Yellow Banks. They've already cut the landing in there, so we would provide just signage at that spot, and we would provide signage at, right now it's called Drott Street Landing or Drott Street Launch in Schofield. They have plans to change that name to the original Brooks and Ross Dam portage and landing there, and then we would have signage there talking about the history of the community of Eau Claire. So it's the Historical Society has chosen all the topics, and if any of the topics impact Native Americans, I had a meeting with the Historical Society of Wisconsin and the Department of Archaeology from the university, and they both are coming in as consultants to the project if there's Native American storytelling that they want to, and then they want to make sure it's told from the tribe's perspective versus our perspective. So, yeah, Pat, that would be just two landings in that case at Yellow Banks and at Drott Street today, and it would be signage only.
Sounds good, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Mr. Bertram. I have just a couple. This looks really neat and encouraging, and I just wondered, with the Conservancy, could you kind of define that for us and the public so it's kind of known what that entails?
Yeah, there's a conservancy on the lower Eau Claire River today. It's the Eau Claire River Conservancy. It's in the city of Wausau, and it's protected property.
It's right here on the map.
Yeah, there you go.
So our sports complex is across the street on Kent Street.
Yeah, and so in that one specifically, there's a landowner to the north side of the Eau Claire River that is interested in giving his land into conservancy to protect it. And it's about 13 additional acres. I think ours is 48 acres and some change in the city of Wausau. Schofield's also looking at protecting that water, and the thought would be is to work with the city of Wausau and to protect that whole flowage in terms of any development, additional development on it. And that would really be between you guys or the cities on that. The piece of property in the Rib River is owned by either the county or the city, and you can see it on that map right there. And so I'm a big fan of naming things because you can brand around it. People will go to the Neal Conservancy or the Neal Park because there's a name to it. And this would be really interesting. It would be one of the first water parks accessible water parks in the state. And it has a way to drive people here to say, and then we could look at federal monies or state monies to maybe it becomes a bird trail that you can only see by canoe or kayak. And I've had discussions with Rib Mountain on the piece of those islands that they own, with the idea, would you guys be interested in making a larger area? So that's where we're at right now, if that answers your question.
It does, thank you. And I saw on the slide with your community partners and all the groups you've talked to, I think one neat thing about this is it literally connects people navigating on the waterways to various neighborhoods and parts of the area. And one thing I think could be really neat if it would be viable in the future, would you be amenable to maybe having some more kind of public participation events surrounding this in some of the neighborhoods that
Absolutely.
because I think not only would that get everyone involved, I think it would help increase excitement around it too. So I think that could be really neat.
Yeah, it's a great thought. We have plans when we not just do the water breaking on the trail, but when we have the completion, we're referred to it as the big paddle. And we would have one in Wausau, we would have one up in Merrill, and then a long-distance paddle from the headwater, or from Hat Rapids down to Lake Bay Dam, potentially. But what's interesting with these trails, if you look at, pick on Cincinnati and also Pittsburgh has the 3 river trails, the amount of water-based events that it's driven to the city, the downtown areas is just it's sort of incredible in terms of races and events. And it really will enliven our downtown and to your point, to all the communities it touches along the river. And it is actually, it was our very first highway in Wisconsin, was the Wisconsin River in our river system. And it gets us back to saying, hey, this is a very valuable highway for communities once again. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the action that's being asked tonight of the Parks Committee is just for a motion of support for this to move forward. So what we're doing, what the County Park Commission did moving forward was to offer that we will write a letter or a resolution saying that we are in support. What it does is it will assist the Parks Foundation in applying for some of those additional funding options for this. And then the other part of it is, as Ms. Bertram mentioned, the operator of this trail will end up being, or the project owner will end up being our department. And that's another big thing to consider is, we have the landings already. We do maintain them. If there were to be any improvements to them, we would have to make sure that we can maintain them, that we have the staff to maintain them. But one of the proposals of the Parks Foundation, and I don't think it was said here today, but one of the things that's been talked about at the foundation is that along with fundraising to get the signs constructed and to get some of the improvements made, is then to also raise enough money for a maintenance fund that would help us maintain if a sign were to get damaged or need to be repaired, or eventually, I think, depending upon how we make the signs, there could be a 8-year lifespan, it could be a 10-year lifespan, depending on how they're made. Hopefully, we can make them so they last as long, but they will have to be eventually replaced, and then that fund will help us. So at this point, our department's in support of doing this, as long as that maintenance fund comes with it, that will help us with the staffing and the maintenance we need down the line. But today, if you are accepting of these signage going at Wausau boat launches, to enhance the boat launches that we currently have and to include it within the trail, we're just asking for a motion of support, and then I, as staff, will write a letter of support from the city and from the county towards this trail, supporting those different launches.
I would make that motion.
Motion from Alder Peckham, second by
I will
Alder
second.
Neal. Yes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously.
Thank you, Bill.
Item number 5, discussion on kayak launches within the city. This had, one of my constituents had requested that this be discussed simply because what the city had done in other areas with the kayak launches had been received so well. I think some community members wanted to know, how could those be replicated in other areas? I think the last item touched on that a little bit, but Ms. Pauley, I think one of the launches specifically mentioned was over by Wausau on the water, the riverfront there. And, certainly what we just heard will play a part in some of these things, but what is the viability of kind of replicating some of those launches in various locations?
Yes, so I did pull some pictures from the kayak launch that we currently have up there. And timing actually worked out well for this because the Lake Wausau Association has brought forth the proposal to put this exact same launch at the Dells of Eau Claire Park, which is a county park, but it is another one downriver. So we are able to put these in. The one thing that we have to consider is we do take them in and out each year, so it's a pretty big task for our staff to do. And that's one thing that the association's requesting that we do with the one at DC Riverside Park, so we just have to assess what that means. But they can be put in, once they're in, they're amazing. They are very helpful. They are, this one at River Life, when we did it years ago, I believe it was 2012, we put this one in, cost us about $22,000. The Lake Wausau Association is now being quoted about $30,000 to put the one in at the Dells of Eau Claire. So this particular launch that you see on the screen, that's, it's called this Easy Dock, and I have a brochure if you want me to pass it around. That's exactly what we have at River Life, and that's exactly what they're planning to put in at DC Riverside Park. That's what we're looking at, and that's what we have the price quote on. Now we have, there's different options too that can be put in. This one is probably the nicest option, probably the longest lasting and easiest to use, but if we wanted more along the river, it would be a matter of probably just identifying where we want them and then getting the funding for it, either in capital improvement or getting grant funding for it or stuff like that. But along with this, one of the things that goes with this river trail is Mr. Bertram had asked me to look at our list of city and county, I only highlighted city here, but city and county boat launches, and determine, what improvements could potentially be made on these. So I did, put together a short little list of things that we can do. We've got a couple of units along, or a couple of places along the river that aren't really developed yet, that we could develop. You mentioned the one, we have a county-owned property over by Rib Mountain that we could develop. We have county-owned property north of the city by Broca that we could develop. Memorial Park has a boat launch, but the seawall has been something on the CIP for years to try to fix. That's something we can still address, and possibly, Memorial Park might be a good location for this. And let's see, develop a landing off of South 28th Ave. That's one I think that's by the Rib Mountain. And then the Lake Wausau one. So those are some of the things I had put together. But we just put in some new landings and new docks at Schofield Park, at Gilbert Park. We don't have these particular launches, but they are much nicer to get your kayaks in and out of. So we can just look at, and we put them on our capital project plan.
Any other input from the committee, questions? Yeah, and I know the constituent who had initially brought this up with me, I think he'd brought up kind of the Fern Island, Oak Island location. It seems like Oak Island was on the plan that Mr. Bertram had gone over, so.
Yep. We currently have an existing launch there. We don't have one of these there, but we could look at what that might take to put one down by Oak Island.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 6, discussion and possible action determining park dedication requirement for Alexander Davis preliminary plat. I'd like to say that, there had been some maps in the packet, and I think they've been updated with some slightly different names. There are also, I think, some peripheral materials as they relate to other divisions and aspects. Given that the implication that the term public land or public space can have, and how some of that's been changed now on these maps that were recently updated, I'd like to have more complete information and have this information in the packet with enough time for the public to examine it, along with some of the documents I was shown prior to the meeting relating to easements and so forth. So as chair, I'm going to pull this item and carry it over.
Mr. Chair, we do need to take action on this because this is a recommendation to the SISM committee that's on Thursday. So
Yes,
they're going to take action on it, so.
Yes, I had talked with Attorney Miller about a different item, and he informed me the process as chair is to state a reason and to pull it and to carry it over. So I'll be doing that today.
But, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, and Mr. Peckham, I guess, speaking, this is a recommendation that's going to SISM. If you don't make a recommendation today, SISM is going to be reviewing this whole development on Thursday and putting all of the conditions in place for this developer to abide by going forward. If we don't get our recommendation, then I'm going to put my staff recommendation, and it's going to go forward like that, but I'm not sure then that it will come back to the Parks Committee, because it will already have gone through the rest of the committees and it'll be in front of the city council. So if you don't want to say as a park committee on whether or not you want to have park dedication fees as part of this, then I'll put my staff request in and it'll go from there. But it's probably not coming back to this committee then.
Well, thank you for your input, Ms. Polly. And I would say normally I would not support having changed information or not having additional information for review by the committee unless the public had due time to review it and understand it. If you feel that having no recommendation at all is detrimental to this committee and the citizens we represent, we can go that way, but it will be kind of noted with my concern. But if you believe that that would be better because it's not coming back and that's advantageous to the community, then I will not pull it.
Well, if I may explain. So the changes that Mr. Killian's referring to of the plat I got today from engineering really just take off, it really has nothing to do with the item that's in front of you tonight. It has to do with, I guess, the other committees. On the plat that's in your packet, you can see like in this area on the corner, it said area dedicated to the public. So the one that was updated, that was given to engineering on Friday, which I just got today, takes those out, that item out, or that label off, and just labels it an outlot. So that's the only change that I'm seeing that was brought forward, and that really doesn't have anything. So the question that I'm bringing forward to the committee today is and maybe you don't have to make a recommendation because there's a city code that it falls under, but per our city code, chapter 21, 16.085, states that any subdivision that's coming forward is required to pay park dedication either in the form of land or cash or a combination thereof. Now, we haven't reviewed a plat in a really long time. I think a couple years ago is when we had our last one. But my recommendation as staff, and I put it in there, is they don't, on this preliminary plat, in the original one that was set and even the one that was updated as of Friday and given to us today, there is no indication whatsoever of parkland. Even on this original one that's in the packet, it says dedicated to the public. That's public right-of-way. That's not parkland. So they're not looking to dedicate any parkland, which would mean that their requirement to satisfy that city code would be to provide fees in lieu of parkland. We do have a fee schedule that's already been adopted by the city council that sets the fees. That is in the memo that was attached to your packet as well, that shows how much they require to pay per lot, and that will come forward in a final plat later on, where it will actually calculate the park dedication fees. But the question today is, do we want them to include a park in this parcel to satisfy their requirement per the city code? Or do we want to take parkland dedication fees that go into a fund for further park development and not include in here? My recommendation as staff is that we would require the park dedication fees because of the proximity of this development to the riverfront as well as the 400 block. We could use those fees for further park development down the line if it were to come. And then this preliminary plat, the process of it through the city, it goes to SISM on Thursday, and I think it needs to go to the Plan Commission, then it comes to the City Council. In the SISM report, all the departments put in their comments of what's needed, like they need, further plans on water and sewer and infrastructure, and there's more needs for roads. That doesn't come here, that will go to SISM, and then that will go to City Council. So you have time as a City Council members to look at this from all the aspects of what is included in it and make the comments there. For that, all our committee has is to say whether, and like I said, you don't have to make that recommendation. I can provide just a staff request and a staff review of what my recommendation would be, but I think that it would be beneficial to this committee to make a recommendation that goes through those other committees, that as they work on this development, that we do not, we would like the park dedication fees, so the developer knows these fees will be charged when they get to that point, once they have the building plans, which we don't need to know now.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion that the committee voice its support for staff's recommendation as voiced.
We've got a motion from Alder Neal to support staff recommendation as voiced, and a second from Alder Watson. Any discussion? And I will say that I think that staff did a good job with the information that they provided with the time they have. They're not the Oracle of Delphi, and they could only work with what they have. And I do support Ms. Polly's recommendation, but still not knowing some of these things that, I'm uncertain about certain elements, just due to the profound implication that the use of public land or public space phrases can have. Well, I support the work done by staff. I'm just going to be voting no due to those uncertainties. So all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
All opposed? No. That passes 4-1.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 7, discussion regarding the Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Department's 2021 year in review and the 2022 work plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an overview of, I put it in your packet. I have it printed out too, if it's easier to see. We did this last year, and I thought it was kind of fun to put it on this infographic again, but it just, I won't go through everything, but it just kind of lists kind of an overview of what the department did in 2021. It was, again, a really busy year, and this includes all county and city stuff, so everything our department does. And then, I just highlighted a few things, like this is something for our budget-wise that our timber sales, that's more of a county resource, but we only budget $245,000 each year. It's based on a 3-year average, because some years no sales get cut, some years a lot of sales get cut, but this last year we had a very successful year, bringing in, $457,000 to that budget. We had a huge pickleball tournament that our recreation supervisor put together in his first year here. He was very successful. He'll continue doing that. We secured a sponsorship of our sports complex with People's State Bank, which is an amazing sponsor. And, we continue to replace playgrounds. We implemented a new software. We are very much involved with Emerald Ash Borer and getting that under control in the city and working on that plan that's brought forward. You'll see in our park updates at the end that we did find a pocket of it on the northeast corner of the city. So we're working on getting that mitigated and those trees down. We continue to have shelter rentals and parties. We had a very successful 101 anniversary party for the county park side. We received the development block grant for Riverside Park. We received another one for this year that we'll be doing for the Lincoln Tot Lot. So we'll have 2 of those going in. We had vegetation management at Barker Stewart Island. I couldn't help but put the little goat in there. We got a catastrophic storm grant through our urban forestry department. When we had that storm go through in July, they received $13,000 to offset those costs. The dog park open, we still have a little bit more of that to go, but we have all of the supplies now in hand. We just have to get the ground thawed, and we'll get the shelter and the agility equipment in. Our swimming lessons were a huge success this year. We have Moving with the Mayor event. So I summarized it all on this sheet as just a year in review and wanted to point that out. Or if there's anything you see we forgot, I'd be happy to add it on there.
Thank you, Ms. Polly. Any comments or questions on that? Alder Peckham online, any comments? No. I'll say that those park improvements with use of the block grants, there has been so much excitement from neighborhoods about those. 3M Park, they know good things are going to come to Riverside Park, and so very neat, and have received a lot of positive feedback on that.
They're really fun. I know that everybody loves the new playgrounds. That's, I think, my favorite part. And then our 2022 work plan, kind of put this together also just as an ease of use. We got a lot on our plate. Some of it's carryover from last year, but some of it's new. We're in the process of that West Side Master Plan, which we do have the city planning staff involved with as well. We have hired MSA as our consultant and are working on some community outreach plans for that, so I'll keep you updated on when those will be. We're working on a sustainability plan for our department. We need to update our city outdoor recreation plan this year. It went through 2022. That was something I just didn't get to last year, so I do have that in the process. We have, like I said, some playgrounds to replace on here of the city ones. We have Riverside, Lincoln Tot Lot, and then the rest are county parks. We are about a year behind on what we had planned there, so we'll get those caught up. We're going to work on some steps and wall repair at Stewart Park. We've got some wood fibers to replace, some listening devices to replace at the 400 block. We're going to put in some new drinking fountains. That was part of our COVID, or our CARES money that we did for the county. Now we're going to do it for the city to put bottle fillers in at the parks and some better drinking fountains. We're working with the woodchucks on the Wausau woodchucks. If you haven't heard that, they are now the Wausau woodchucks. Exciting. We're working on them with their scoreboard, and then we'll do some tennis court replacement, and then we'll definitely finish the dog park. We're going to work on expanding our recreation offers. Our recreation supervisor has some really neat ideas for that, and just working on some long-term planning. So that's our summary of 2022.
Alder Larson.
Thank you, Ms. Polly. I have one question I don't know if I brought to this committee, but I know I brought to you. When you mentioned the 400 block, I noticed, I go down there quite a bit, and the stage, the base is in disrepair.
Oh, yep.
Is that on the scoreboard to get fixed this year?
Yep, it's on our small project list. I just didn't list all those out, but I will make sure that, yep.
Thank you.
Okay, see no other comments, then we'll move on to the item number 8, educational items. Ms. Polly?
Yeah, so it's park update. Let's see, we'll go in order. Not much on there. We did some renovations to the Riverside Park shelter with some kitchen upgrades and some flooring upgrades in there to meet our ADA requirements that we've been working on. Sylvan Hill Park, we did have one tow line that went down the night the county had their free employee night. It's back up and running, so I think the city had theirs on Sunday and it was all fine. I'm not sure. But we've been working hard on that. We have been really struggling on staffing Sylvan Hill operations this year with just our seasonal staff and the ability, so we're throwing in some full-time staff here and there just to keep it going with the rentals and stuff that we have. And then I mentioned already the urban forestry and our new city forester, which I will have here at a future meeting, so you can meet him and we can talk about what he sees so far in his first 2 months on the job. But we did find a pocket in the northeast neighborhood, so we're working on that. And then we're just routine. We've got ice rinks up and running. We've got the ice arenas up and running. Sylvan Hill, 9 miles being groomed. Sylvan Hill cross country is being groomed periodically. So we're kind of in the midst of. It'd be nice if we had not one big snowfall to give us some better snow, but we're working with what we've got. So that's park updates.
Could you, Ms. Polly?
Yep.
Yeah, could you talk a little bit about what's happening at, in terms of skating at Marathon Park with that
Oh.
expanse of ice you had, what you're doing with it?
Sure. I want to move this on to you, Mr. Chair. Sure, we had flooded majority of the infield at Marathon Park, which is all the grass area south of the grandstand for the visit convention, the CVB's pond hockey tournament. And so because we had that big sheet of ice, a couple of our staff members thought, we could clear it all off and it would be just one big sheet of ice, but we've had a couple people ask, why don't we have like an ice trail somewhere, like Chicago or Maple Grove has. And that there's a lot more to that than this, but they came up with, well, let's just clear what they're calling a river on that big sheet of ice. So we have like a river trail that they've cleared at Marathon Park that people can go on rather than just year-round sheet of ice. So while it's cold enough and the ice is there, go check out our lazy skating river.
Has that had any publicity or anything?
We did. We put it out on Facebook, and then the news actually got a hold of it. They did do a story on it about a week and a half ago with a couple of our staff members. So,
Good,
yeah.
very good. Nice to see the initiative on something like that.
Yeah, our staff had fun with it.
Alder Watson.
So, you mentioned you have sort of a shortage of seasonal workers, right? And I know that was sort of an issue with the pools in the summer. Like, do you have a plan that you're starting to think of? I know it's pretty early for that, but any other kind of ways to draw seasonal workers? Or is this something you've seen in the past, or do you think it's just because of the...
Well, I think it's a problem that people are having everywhere, trying to find. We really do need to look at our wages. The other thing that we need to look at as far as Sylvan goes is our age of our employees. For some reason, we've had in our department, and I don't know because all of our employees are county employees, so I have to we're double checking with our risk manager as to whether or not, but all of our employees have to be 17 or 18 to be able to work for us because of the equipment they operate. But that's usually in the summer when they operate a mower or a truck. At Sylvan, they don't need to operate any equipment. So we are checking to see if we can lower that age to get more high school students, because then they're here and around. Our college students are kind of hit and miss, and that's where our problem has been. So that's one thing we're going to look at. But I think our wages. we have to
Okay.
look at.
And then just as a, follow-up, not that, like, I know it's a ways off, but, you did that strategy for the swimming, like the lifeguard training thing. Are you going to start to try to amp up so we have ample supply for the summer?
Yeah, Mark's already working on it. I think he's gotten his letters out to his staff. It is helpful. He does have quite a few returning, and that's where last year we had that, where we were hurting just a little bit is because there was a year lag in there when we weren't open in 2020. A lot of those lifeguards either aged out and found full-time jobs, or they found another job in the meantime. So we had a really good base last year. Now I think it will be a little bit better moving forward, hopefully, but Mark is working on that.
Thank you. And then, shall we move to Riverside Park?
Yeah, I don't have much more than this. This is actually just an update. I talked to Mr. Lindman. This is all the update he had was what was brought to the city council on January 11th. So all of you should have seen this in your council packet that you voted on to approve this funding for this remedial action options report. So we're just waiting on there. He says he's expecting something within the next 2 months, I think, to bring it back to this committee or to the city council. I guess I have to check with him on exactly where it's going to go, but they're going to, once it's completed, bid specifications will be prepared to propose to the city council on how we're going to remediate the area. So that's all I have, is the same thing you had.
So does it seem that because it had to go to finance for the funding approval, that might have been part of the delay in the process? I know, because we had heard at one point it may have been ready in January. That didn't occur. Does that look like it may have been because it had to get some funding approval?
It does, but it looked like when the DNR gave back their comments on the report that we were waiting on, this ROAR report came out of their comments, which is what made Mr. Lindman go for funding for it. That was not a known funding until we got those DNR comments back. So,
Thank you.
yep. Okay. Yeah, we can go on to the next one. All right, and the last one, so there's a lot of information in your packet that you can comb through, but I was asked to bring back some condition report on that Rosenberg East site, which is adjacent to the Two Hearts Dog Park, and kind of where we were at with that, because there was somebody who was interested in buying it and then donating it. But talking with Kevin Fable, our environmental engineer, and then getting copies of all those documents that are included in your packet, it really shows that there's some major issues with the cleanup of that property that the owner has not addressed and is ignoring of the DNR, and so it's gone through a series of notices, and now they've got, let's see, they had, I should have had this out, they had a deed affidavit for environmental contamination that found issues, and now they issued the last document, which is in your packet. I should bring it up. I'm gonna bring it up. So I think in a nutshell, basically, so it starts in February of 2018, where they found a contamination on the site, provided the property owner with what was required within so many days. They did not comply, so then in July of 18, they were issued a notice of noncompliance. Action was required by August 20th of 18. They still did not comply, so they were issued this deed affidavit for environmental contamination. They still have not addressed that, so then they were issued in this last year of 2021, and this is all in here, that's the assessment. Lots of documentation for your reading to help you go to sleep at night. Where is it? This is a long report. Oh, I think I passed it. But essentially, what I've been told from the DNR is that if the city wants to take on all of this legal issues and take on the responsibility of cleaning up this site, you can, but they strongly advise against it because it is under the jurisdiction of the owner. It is their responsibility to do it. Nobody should purchase it until it has been cleaned up and approved by the DNR that it has been remediated. And the cost could be substantial on it because of what's been found on it. So I wanted to provide you with all those documents that you could probably much easier look at and read than I can explain. But it does show that it is a contaminated site. There's been notices given, and the city should not take it until it's been confirmed that it's all been cleaned. So the last one was a final case closure. No, that's not the right one. Yes.
Is there periodic tests taken on the dog park then, soil samples and such to make sure that none of these contaminants are leaching over there?
I do not believe so, but I can ask the DNR if they have fear of it leaching. But I believe, from what I understand, and I don't know this a lot, is that because our site was remediated and capped, it should be safe, and it should not take on those contaminants from where they're found. But I can verify that because I'm not an expert on that. I don't know if
Thank you.
that's true. Mm-hmm.
I had a question too.
Yep, Alder Peckham?
Thank you. I was trying to scroll through this and get the essence of the so many pages. And it seems to start out saying, "Dear owner, you have to clear this up. Dear owner, you have to clear this up." your owner, you have to clear this up. Then about 2/3 or 3/4 of the way through, there's a page that seems to say, no further action is required. So my inclination early in the reading of that material was that perhaps that the committee should go on record as asking the DNR to start pushing on this to get the proper remediation. Then I ran into the no further action part, and it threw me for a loop. So, you know where we're at on that?
As far as I know, they are still required to clean it up, and the DNR is still following up and has this, I can't find the right page, but there is something issued in 21 that there is now, what I was told is there is now legal dealings between the owner and the DNR. I don't know what exactly that means, but the DNR, to my knowledge, is still pursuing that this be cleaned up as it's supposed to be.
Okay, it's not on the agenda for today to take an action like, sending a message to the DNR on this, but I guess if there was anything we could do to move it along, that'd be great.
Thank you, Alder Peckham, and perhaps we could address that one under future items, because we could agendize that next time, in theory, if you'd like. So we can, yeah.
Let's do that.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
I guess my question would be, I understand the city's concern about this, but how can the city get involved in cleaning up private land that's between the owner and the DNR? I guess that's my question.
My idea, if I can just chime in here, my idea was that we would, as a city committee, communicate to the DNR, probably Mr. Thompson, the hydrogeologist, that we would like this to be resolved as soon as possible and get her done.
So, Mr. Peckham, I just found that I included in here in this final case closure for continued obligation. I think that's where you read that no further action is taken. This is actually, the Bonneker site is the dog park. So this was included
okay.
as a reference in here. It's an excerpt, reference 4 to this document that's before it, that our site has been cleaned up, but theirs still has not.
Okay. Then I would suggest that we put it on the agenda for next time to consider communicating to the DNR our wish to bring any possible pressure on these people to do the remediation that they've known about for 4 years now.
Sure, and Alder Peckham, would you mind holding that thought until we get to that item, and then we could perhaps address your...
That would be dandy.
Okay, thank
Fine,
you.
thank you.
Thank you. And I would just also note about this property, as we've seen in other areas of the city, that it is in a qualified census tract, and I think we can talk about it for agenda item language in the future when we get there. But, while the city may not have control over how these dealings occur, it's my understanding that anyone has the ability to express their sentiments to regulators in terms of concern. So whether you're a private citizen or a committee, I think if we're concerned about that makes sense. Then, no further updates on that regard, Ms. Polly? Okay. Then number 9, future agenda items. Let's start with what Alder Peckham just mentioned, perhaps. We'll put on some sort of communication to the DNR regarding this property and committee sentiments. Is that what you're thinking, Alder Peckham?
Yeah, I think the community should know also and maybe we can let the community know through this action that we are concerned about this and we want it resolved.
Thank you. So we could put that one down. Any other future agenda items from,
Mr. Chair?
yes,
Although I agree with Alders Peckham's future agenda item, I guess my question is it up to this committee, or would it be up to the SISM committee or some other committee to pursue this?
well, I don't think I can get into discussing the future agenda item. I can discuss that in regard to the past agenda item because it's related to that, the update. And my opinion would be that because there is a park property immediately adjacent to this property that creates some direct relevance to this committee, and if other committees have concerns, I think we could perhaps address it in a way that they're welcome to sign on. But it appears that this property and its proximity has ventured into our purview to some degree.
Thank you.
Alder Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was sort of wondering too, future agenda items, just maybe discussing more about the Special Dog Park Committee. Does it see an update on who's active, who's going to continue, and then any actions that they may wanting to take soon, for creation of a new one, so.
Thank you. We'll put that on there too. Anything else? Then I guess we'll, a motion for adjournment.
Adjourn.
Alder Watson, second by Alder Larson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
We're all done.
Thank you, Alder Peckham.